Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paridana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Paramami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Krupa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, welcome to the beginning of chapter 2, our study of this Bhagavad Gita. So today we'll cover the first 16 verses of chapter 2. And so just a brief review of last week's discussion, where we primarily discussed Arjuna's 5 reasons for not wanting to fight the war, and the first expressing his very devotional mood of compassion, thinking it was very saintly to forgive those who were aggressors against him. And then he came down to the platform of saying, well, if I win the kingdom, I'll have nobody to enjoy it with. Those who I would want to enjoy it with will be killed on this battlefield. And so what is the point? That was his second reason for not wanting to fight. His third reason for not wanting to fight was that he will incur the great sin by killing elders and gurus, and so he'll endure much suffering. So no good will come from fighting this war. The fourth reason, he said, well, if everybody on this battlefield perishes, then there'll be nobody left to protect society, to establish the rules of how things should be followed, and the elders will all perish, and thus Varna Sankara, this unwanted progeny, will result in the destruction of society, and I don't want to be the cause of this. And then he presents finally, and we'll see again a little bit today, this indecision, not sure what is better, to fight and win, or to just die on the battlefield, unresisting. So he is unsure what is best for him. So Arjuna has presented these reasons for not fighting, and they seem very logical. But we know that because Arjuna was looking at this from the perspective of I am this body, and forgetting that we are all spirit souls, he was left in a position of great distress. He was grief-stricken, and so this is very instructive for us, that we are guaranteed to be full of grief, full of anxiety, fear, illusion, confusion, distress, and all these emotions. whenever we view a situation from the perspective of I am this body, and as we mentioned last time, it is a great indicator for us when we experience these emotions, whatever situation is causing that, we can just evaluate, and remember to look at it from the perspective of I am spirit, soul, I am not this body. So Arjuna's confusion was based on this, and Krishna now is going to speak, beginning here in the second chapter, and he's going to completely upend Arjuna's positions and reasons for not wanting to fight. While they seem very logical, we'll see why actually, from the perspective of I am spirit, soul, these reasons for not wanting to fight are actually quite inappropriate. So that is what we'll be uncovering over the next 2 weeks as we continue in this second chapter. So the first 5 or 6 verses here we'll discuss, and Arjuna opens this chapter with, Sanjaya opens this chapter by saying, Sanjaya said, seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusudana, Krishna spoke the following words. So we see Arjuna and Sanjaya referring to Krishna as Madhusudana. And Sanjaya is indicating to Dhritarashtra that Krishna would soon kill the demon of Arjuna's ignorance. He would get him out of his ignorance and inspire him to fight and do his duty. So he was tempering Dhritarashtra's enthusiasm because seeing Arjuna, depressed and having sat down on the chariot, he wanted to temper Dhritarashtra's enthusiasm. So he refers to Krishna as Madhusudana, indicating that soon Krishna, by speaking, will bring to an end Arjuna's demons of ignorance as he killed the demon Madhu. And so we're going to see as we progress here, and we'll see this throughout the Bhagavad Gita, there's a beautiful inner dialogue that is taking place. And this inner dialogue is explained to us by our acharyas, and we understand, the whys and what is happening as we move verse to verse. And so it's very nice to see this. And Srila Prabhupada makes a very important point in this purport, and it sets the stage for really everything Krishna is about to speak, which is that Arjuna's compassion was not incorrect, but his compassion was misplaced. He was having compassion for the body, but not for the person, the soul. And he gives this very vivid example of if someone has fallen into the ocean and you are on a boat and you want to rescue that person, you'll not pull out the clothes of that person, but you'll pull the person out of the water. There's no point to save the clothes of a drowning man. You want to save the man. And so similarly, Prabhupada is guiding that our compassion should be shown to the person, and that person we know is the spirit soul, not the body. The body is simply an outer garment, a set of clothes, as Krishna will give this metaphor coming up in a few verses. So, very important point that Prabhupada is establishing very early on here is that our compassion should be shown to the soul, and that is where Arjuna's first misstep is. Again, Arjuna is being put in this position for our benefit, so let's not forget that. But that is the understanding that we have. So now in the second verse, Krishna is going to speak for the first time. And we see, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not all befitting a man who knows the values of life. They lead not to higher planets, but to infamy." So Krishna here speaking for the very first time in the Bhagavad Gita now. And he speaks very sharply to Arjuna. And why is he speaking so sharply? Krishna is saying, these so-called nice gestures that you are trying to make, they will lead to your ruination. He says they'll not lead to higher planets. Actually, they're going to lead to infamy, which is very difficult for a Kshatriya to tolerate. So neither will you get a higher birth, but instead you're also going to suffer the great difficulty of infamy, the insults that a Kshatriya cannot tolerate. So Arjuna thought he was avoiding sins by fighting and was going to avoid suffering. But in fact, Krishna is saying that they lead not to higher planets, but to infamy. So Krishna is kind of grabbing Arjuna's attention here, having come to a very despondent state. The other point I wanted to make here is we see that Srila Vyasadeva is referring to Krishna as Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. So the first time he speaks, he doesn't say Sri Krishna Uvacha. He says Bhagavan Uvacha. And Vyasadeva has a very important objective here. Everybody knows that Krishna is speaking to Arjuna. Even the layman who has very, very little information knows who spoke Bhagavad Gita on the battlefield. They'll say Krishna to Arjuna. So that is very common. But most do not know who is Krishna. So Srila Vyasadeva is saying Sri Bhagavan Uvacha to indicate to us that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Though he is driving Arjuna's chariot, don't mistake, this is Sri Bhagavan. Just like if we say, Mr. Smith is coming home for dinner, well, that may or may not mean something. But if I say the CEO of Ford Motor Company is coming home for dinner, now that means something because it is the position. We may not know who is the CEO of that company. So similarly, some may not know who is Krishna. Oh, he's one of the 10 avatars, or he's some empowered human. That is the foolish mentality. So to make sure that all of us remember, Srila Vyasadeva is saying, no, it is Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Supreme Lord. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada establishes, based on a commentary from Parashar Muni, the father of Srila Vyasadeva, what is the meaning of Bhagavan? One who possesses these 6 opulences in full, in completeness. And then Prabhupada gives some references that also further establish Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, referring to the Brahma Samhita, verse 5.1, and also from Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto, where it says Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, Krishna's tu Swayam Bhagavan, that the Supreme Lord is the source of all of these incarnations. So important learning from this second verse at the very beginning in Krishna's first words in this most glorious Bhagavad Gita. He continues in the third verse, O son of Pritha, do not yield to this degrading impotence. It does not become you. Give up such petty weakness of heart and arise, O chastiser of the enemy. So here, Krishna gives a gentle slap to Arjuna and then props him up. So he's being very firm, but also encouraging him. Right? He calls him the son of Pritha, to remind that he has very strong Kshatriya roots as the son of Indra. He has a good lineage, and it is not magnanimous, for a Kshatriya to quit a fight when it is proper, when it is a duty, and in particular, when it is under the instruction of Krishna. So a Kshatriya does not decline a righteous fight, and certainly this is of one. So he calls him weak and being of impotence, which are insults for a Kshatriya, and we know how Kshatriyas react to insults. They do not take very kindly to such. So Krishna is trying to help Arjuna regain his vigor, his Kshatriya spirit, and so he, yields these. The commentary we see around, how elders like Bhishma and Drona, could be killed, and we see in the commentaries that because they lost their position of deserving to be respected, when they took the side of Duryodhana, seeking financial shelter, they lost their position to be respected, and so Krishna is speaking here very, very strongly to that, and the Prabhupada gives that comment about the respectable Bhishma and relatives and why they had lost that position. So now in verse 4, Arjuna is going to respond. And Arjuna says, O killer of the enemies, O killer of Madhu. We see here again, Madhusudana. How can I counteract with arrows in battle men like Bhishma and Drona, who are worthy of my worship? Right? So Arjuna responds, saying, hey, it is not weakness, it is not impotence that is leading me to not fight. It is not weakness of heart, but it is out of a compassion, a strong heart, actually, for my elders that I'm not fighting. So Arjuna's counterpoint to Krishna's last two statements. And again, according to Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, by calling Krishna Madhusudana indirectly, Arjuna is reminding Krishna that he is the killer of the demon Madhu. But he did not kill his elders or his respected personalities like his guru Sandipani Muni, or his grandfather Ugrashen, which is what Krishna is asking Arjuna to do. So Arjuna, by calling Krishna Madhusudana here, is kind of calling out, again, according to Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, that Krishna, you did not kill your elders and your guru, so why you're asking me to do so? So again, we see this really nice, inner dialogue taking place with very select words. So Arjuna then continues here in the 5th verse. It would be better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of the lives of great souls who are my teachers. Even though desiring worldly gain, they are superiors. If they are killed, everything we enjoy will be tainted with blood. So Arjuna will answer the doubt that may arise of how he will maintain himself. Krishna may say, well, what are you going to do if you don't have a kingdom to rule? And Arjuna says that he is prepared to retire to the forest. That is better than begging. And because Arjuna would have nothing to rule, he would have no other occupation. His only livelihood is to govern. And without a kingdom to govern, then his only remaining occupation would be to become a beggar. And so Arjuna thinks that it is better to become a beggar than incur the sins of killing his elders. And again, we'll see Krishna's opinion of such logic very, very vividly. But Arjuna here is responding. Now we come to a nice inflection point in the 6th verse, where though Arjuna has presented his counterpoints, it is clear that he hasn't resolved what to do. And so in the 6th verse, Arjuna expresses his indecision, his dilemma. Nor do we know which is better, conquering them or being conquered by them. If we kill the sons of Dhritarashtra, we should not care to live, yet they are now standing before us on the battlefield. So this is Arjuna's major dilemma. If he wins, he loses, because he will have killed so many and incurred so many sinful reactions, and so if he wins the battle, he loses. And if he loses the battle, he loses his life, because they are prepared to kill him on the other side. So this is Arjuna's lose-lose situation. He wins the battle, he loses the battle, he loses. This is the definition of a dilemma. And we see that, and even if he runs away from the battlefield, he will lose, because living the life of a beggar is actually worse for a Kshatriya than even being killed on the battlefield, as we saw in the pastime of Bhim being asked to ask for permission for those flowers. It is not the position of a Kshatriya to be able to do so. So in either scenario, it means really his death, winning the battle or losing it. And this is a real dilemma. And we also will face dilemmas in our traverses through this material world. Seemingly, if I take option A, I lose. If I take option B, I lose. And how to overcome. And when we encounter these dilemmas, it's very debilitating, very stressful, very difficult. How to find clarity of purpose and action is very, very difficult for us to understand what to do. And so Arjuna was put into this dilemma. He was put into this dilemma for us to learn how to get out of these dilemmas. Arjuna again is playing a role in this drama so that we can understand for ourselves. Hopefully and thankfully we don't face such severe dilemmas that Arjuna is facing. We can imagine how we would be confronted and what emotions we might have when we had to either kill our elders or be killed by them. Imagine going to a family reunion and somebody draws a line in the middle of that hall and says, "Okay, now you all fight." What our consciousness would be. So this was the dilemma that Arjuna faced, very extreme. And now Prabhupada establishes in this purport a very important for us. And before Arjuna surrenders, Prabhupada, is commenting on Arjuna's qualifications to receive knowledge, because Krishna is now going to speak. And so what is Arjuna's qualification? And we can try to develop the same qualification. So as we read Krishna's instructions to us, we can try to become qualified to receive this knowledge. So the qualifications Prabhupada points to, he says that his mind and senses are controlled. Though it's a very difficult situation, he has at least some controlled mind. He's not interested in the wealth or power. He's not tempted by the opportunity to rule the whole planet. He is detached, meaning he's willing to be a beggar. He's not attached to his lifestyle or a certain quality of life. He is faithful and tolerant. So Prabhupada guides that these are very good qualities for us to be able to then receive the knowledge that Krishna is going to speak. But before Krishna is going to speak, Arjuna has to do one very important thing. And this is really, we can say in some ways, the most important instruction for us in the entire Bhagavad Gita. Because if we follow Arjuna's footsteps here in this coming 2 verses, then everything that Krishna speaks will be actually understood by us, and will come to the same conclusion that Arjuna did at the end of this Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Karishye vachanam tava, I am prepared to follow. So this is the important inflection point for Arjuna, and it is his surrender to Krishna. This surrendering to Krishna is very, very important, and also not so easy. So Arjuna says in the 7th verse, "Now I am confused about my duty, and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple, a soul surrendered unto me, unto you. Please instruct me." So this is worth hearing again, worth the reading again. "Now I am confused about my duty, and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple, a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me." So, Arjuna's great arguments, based on compassion, based on Shastra, based on logic, clearly did not bring resolution to his problems. Though he had good Shastric knowledge, he applied good logic, he could not solve his own problems. And Prabhupada comments that because the material world is very, very, very difficult, it is extremely perplexing. It is very difficult that even the powerful Arjuna was still confused to the point of shaking and sweating and choking voice. So what to say of us? And so in that condition, what did he do? He surrendered to Guru, to Krishna. So Prabhupada comments in this purport and also in the purport to verse 8 that all the material knowledge in the world, it will not help us solve our problems. It will not bring the end. But there, all we see is one problem after another. Cure one disease and another comes. Cure one conflict and another one arises. Cure one difficulty and one more comes. It is a never-ending problem-solving mission. But one must understand the real problems of life to find relief from them, and that we all know: the birth, death, old age, and disease. So no material endeavor can solve death, can solve old age, can solve disease. No, whatever effort we perform. So Arjuna knows this very clearly. He knows that even the wealth, which we deem the ultimate problem solver, more money, but even wealth will not solve his problems. Winning a kingdom says will not make him happy. You know, the entire world is convinced that money will give me happiness. Just one more zero in my bank account and I'm all set. One more promotion, one more car, one more bedroom in my home. But Arjuna knew that this was not the right track. Right? He's going to say in the 8th verse that even having an unrivaled kingdom would not dispel his frustration. So this is an important point, and Prabhupada comments in the purport here about misers. You know, this kripana. The materialists are very miserly. We have the great wealth of intelligence in this human form of life, but using it just to live like cats and dogs, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending very nicely, is a very wasted use of this valuable intelligence. So the freedom from this material world is the only way to find real happiness, to find real peace. And so Arjuna now has understood that this world is just filled with one misery after another. It is a very cruel place. And so the only way to get free from material misery is by the help of Guru. That is the only means to get out. You know, if you have your hands and legs tied, only someone who is free can come and untie you. One who is unbound. So, similarly, one who is unbound by the material conditioning, unbound by the modes of material nature, can free us as we are bound. So that is the spiritual master. And Prabhupada comments on the qualification of a guru. It is one must be a master in the science of Krishna. Right? He quotes in the next verse this verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Regardless of birth or age or race, but it is one must be a master in the science of Krishna. Okay? So, in this verse, we see the mood of Arjuna, and this is very, very important for us, and we can try to bring and follow in Arjuna's footsteps. That we cannot learn anything until we are fully convinced ourselves that we do not know, that we cannot solve our own problems. That we are absolutely in need to learn something. Then we can actually understand. When we are ready to give up all our own plans, and it's very difficult to do, then we can surrender. Desperate for help. We recognize we cannot help ourselves. And Guru is the only one who can help us. And we hear this example of having fallen into a dark well. If you have fallen into a well and you cannot get out, and you see somebody at the top who drops a rope to you, how much we would surrender to that rope and to that person to pull us out. We have tried to get out of this well. We have tried to climb the walls. We have been searching for different ways, but we have failed. So when that rope comes, when you're in that condition, then it is very easy to surrender to that person and that rope and to get pulled out. So Krishna does not instruct Arjuna until he is fully surrendered. Why? Because Krishna, and we see, Krishna didn't interrupt him. Arjuna was making one statement after another. The first statement Arjuna made about compassion, Krishna could have stopped him and said, no, you're wrong, you're thinking about the body. But he let Arjuna continue, and he let him continue, and he let him continue. Why? Because until Arjuna was ready to hear, Krishna is not going to instruct him. If the man at the top of the well drops the rope and gives instructions, and we don't hold on until we're convinced we need to get out of there. Then we're going to listen. So until we're convinced we need to get out, that rope has no purpose for us. Right? So the spiritual master, Krishna, is dropping this rope for us. But we have to choose whether we are going to hold on or not, whether we are going to clasp our hands and grab onto this rope. So it's a very important point for us because Arjuna says, you tell me what is best for me. Now, to come to this point, it means one has to surrender all their own desires, their own ideas. And there are many progressive stages towards this ultimate point. You know, we ask for someone to sanction our desires. You know, can I do this? Arjuna did not say, Krishna, I think I should not fight this war for these reasons. Is that okay? That is not how Arjuna has presented himself. Instead, he has said, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. So this mood of how to ask is very, very nicely illustrated for us by Arjuna here. And it takes, full surrender. And that will come when we are fully convinced that we do not know and that we cannot solve our own problems. Then that mood will come, like that person in a well who is desperate after trying so many different ways to get out, is convinced he cannot get out. So when that rope is dropped, he has full faith to just hold on to that rope and get out. So our hope is that we can come to the point of asking Krishna and to Guru ultimately, please instruct me. You know what's best for me. You tell me. I think this is good. I think this is okay, but I don't really know. So we can try to follow in Arjuna's footsteps and come to this point of full surrender. So spend a lot of time on this verse and this point because it is really the key to be able to really understand what Krishna is saying. Otherwise, we'll simply ask Krishna, we'll simply ask Guru to sanction all of our desires. Krishna, I want to do this. Is it okay? Krishna, I want that. Will you give it to me? That is not a soul surrendered. And we see this with Arjuna's actions, which is very, very instructive for us. Okay? We could spend the rest of the discussion on that, but instead we'll continue on. In verse 8, I can find no means to drive away this grief which is drying up my senses. I will not be able to dispel it even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth with sovereignty like the demigods in heaven. So, why does Arjuna speak this? He's already surrendered to Krishna. But Krishna has not yet spoken in response to Arjuna's surrender. So Srila Baladev Vidabhushan explains that after Arjuna's comment that he is confused and surrendered, Krishna is saying, well, use your own logic and reasoning to solve your problems. You have already established this. And Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur comments, that Krishna is saying, hey, I'm your friend. I am not in the mood of being your guru. How I can accept you as my disciple? But because you're very close and you have a humble attitude towards Vyasadeva and others, go to them. So Krishna is testing Arjuna's determination. And so seeing that Krishna yet was not ready to instruct, Arjuna speaks this verse with the definitive ask. And again, we see this very nice inner dialogue taking place. And he says, I can find no means to drive away the grief, which is drying up my senses. So a further point is that, we can superficially surrender. We can superficially say, oh, please instruct me. But really it must come from the heart. And there must be a strong determination and conviction in the heart. Because Krishna was not yet ready to speak to Arjuna, even after the 7th verse, where he says, I am your disciple, a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. That it's one thing to say it. It's a deeper thing to actually feel it. And that is what we want to try to pray to Arjuna and pray to Krishna, that we can come to that point where we actually feel it. It's good to say it, it's better than not, but it's until we actually feel it. So it's quite interesting that Krishna did not speak immediately after the 7th verse, but he now will speak after this 8th verse, where Arjuna reaffirms his determination to hear. And he reaffirms it in a very nice way by proving that he has understood that he cannot solve his own problems. Because he says, even if I win in a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom, you know, when you have money or you have power, our biggest fear is that we'll lose it. So Arjuna says, even if there is no fear of losing it, meaning it's unrivaled, nobody is going to try to come and usurp my kingdom, still I will not find happiness. So Arjuna is demonstrating and proving with conviction that he needs Krishna's help. So again, it's very nice for us to see these combination of two verses: to surrender, to beg to be instructed by, not to have our desires sanctioned, but then to truly have that in the inner core of our heart, beyond just verbalizing it. So this brings then Krishna to speak, as we'll see in the 11th verse. So Arjuna concludes his presentation of surrendering by referring to Krishna as Govinda and Rishikesha. So in the 9th verse, Sanjaya said, having spoken thus, Arjuna, chastiser of enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I shall not fight, and fell silent. So we see the reference to Rishikesha here made, and also Govinda. Rishikesha referring again. Arjuna knows Krishna is the master of his senses, and he will draw them back to the right position, his senses to the right position, which will bring him to fighting, which is, we know, the right thing to do, because that is Krishna's desire. And he calls him Govinda, meaning the object of pleasure for the senses. And Krishna knows what will give us real happiness. And so Arjuna is calling Krishna Govinda. You know what is best for me. You know what will give me the most happiness. So please instruct me as so. In our Acharya's comment, and Srila Prabhupada comments about Arjuna being referred to as Parantapa. Again, Sanjaya is tempering Dhritarashtra's enthusiasm here, saying he is the chastiser of the enemies, right? The killer of the enemies. So don't worry, Arjuna soon will be brought back to his consciousness. He'll become free of illusion and will begin fighting. So he is managing Dhritarashtra's expectations. So we see wonderful different levels of dialogue in this early part of the 2nd chapter. So now Krishna is begin to speak. And in the 10th verse we see, O descendant of Bharata, at that time Krishna, smiling in the midst of both the armies, spoke the following words to the grief-stricken Arjuna. So we see Krishna was happy to accept Arjuna as his disciple, and thus he was smiling. He was pleased to see this surrendered mood, and the Guru is very pleased to see this surrendered mood. But then he turned grave, and Prabhupada comments about the instructions from Guru to disciple are very serious. They are important and very serious. So these discussions are not a joking matter or a trivial matter, but they are quite serious. So Krishna's mood changes. He is happy to accept him as disciple, and now he is going to speak in a grave mood, and a grave mood in compassion, having great care for Arjuna. And so we'll see. So in the 11th verse, Krishna now speaks directly to Arjuna in an instructing mood for the first time. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, while speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. So this is Krishna's first of now the next 20 verses. He is going to speak about body and soul. We are not this body, we are spirit soul. 20 verses he is going to speak. and hammer home this idea, because the root cause of Arjuna's problems is he forgot we are not this body, we are spirit soul. So Krishna is getting right to the point, directly instructing him on this topic, and he's going to be unrelenting in a mood of compassion by repeating this from so many different angles. The next 20 verses all are going to be on this topic. So knowing we are not this body, we are spirit soul, this is learned. Prabhupada says, learned is one who knows the body and the soul. Right? So he is chastising Arjuna here again to wake him up, saying, you thought you were speaking something wise, referring to this, Varna Sankara and this mood of compassion and the sin of killing elders. But no, one who is wise does not lament for that which is not worthy of our lamentation. Right? So to say someone is not wise is quite an insult. And so it's a chastising mood. And so the guru also will sometimes chastise the disciple, but it is actually the expression of the greatest love. Guru will only chastise the disciple when the disciple is able to take it, and also when in that mood of surrender. Then the guru knows he can speak freely to truly change our consciousness, to instruct. Otherwise, the guru will not speak so strongly and will speak in light words and not ready to not disturb our consciousness. So while it may seem, why Krishna is speaking this way, we know, and if you hear, some of the pastimes from Srila Prabhupada's disciples, some of their most cherished moments with their spiritual master was when Srila Prabhupada was very strong with them, because to them it was the proof that Prabhupada really loved them. Because of that love, he was willing to even be strong with them to correct them in their areas of missteps, because they, only when one has strong love is one willing to even go as far as to speak very, aggressively. And so we should understand that mood, that actually the disciple relishes those moments when the guru will speak in a chastising mood, because it means that one has really earned the love of the guru. So the point of this verse, again, the body, whether living or dead, is not worthy of lamentation. It is irrelevant. Right? And quoting Prabhupada, he says, one who knows this is actually learned. For him, there is no cause for lamentation, regardless of the condition of the material body. So this is verse 11. Then we get this very famous verse 12. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So in this verse 12, we see that we eternally exist, past, present, and future. And not only do we exist, Krishna exists. So there is this individuality that is always there. The idea that Krishna has a temporary form is directly opposed in this verse. The Mayavadis will say that Krishna has a temporary form, but he is actually impersonal. But he just says here, never was there a time that I did not exist, nor you, nor shall any of us cease to be. Which means we all exist eternally, individually, and we are separated. So this is a very, very important point. Prabhupada gives the nice analogy towards the end of the purport about licking the outside of the bottle of honey. In order to really taste the nectar of this Bhagavad Gita, we must come in the mood of devotion. Otherwise, it is like trying to taste honey by licking the outside of the bottle. Very, very nice example. Then we get to the 13th verse of chapter 2, and this is the foundational verse of the entire Bhagavad Gita. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. So this is, again, a foundational verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Baladev Vidyabhushan and Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur comment that Arjuna says, fine, but I love these people. I love the bodies of these people. I have memories with different aspects of these bodies. My relationships is not with their soul. And so that is the source of my happiness. And so Krishna is saying then in response, but the changing of bodies is inevitable. The soul is constantly moving from youth, from boyhood to youth to old age. We cannot stop it. Right? So Arjuna had no reason to fear the changing of the bodies. It is something that is happening in the due course of time. And so there is nothing to lament. A wise person does not lament. And, how to explain to someone like, this body is, if we bring our baby picture and then we say, this is me, but who is me? The body is completely changed, but I'm still referring to that as me. It means my reference is not the body, it is something within, and that again is the spirit soul. Bhagavad Prabhu gives the example of, if you walk into a red room, you do not become red. Just because I've entered this body doesn't mean I am this body. So like this, we have so many wonderful examples for us to illustrate this, like the car and the driver that Prabhupada gave, and so many others. So Krishna is saying ultimately Arjuna should be happy to give Bhishma Dev a new working body, a new lively body. He has come quite old now. And more likely even to be able to elevate to the higher spiritual births. So Arjuna should be happy. So this Dhiras, the sober person, he must know three things: the soul, the super soul, and nature. And this is in the second paragraph of this commentary, that a man who has perfect knowledge of the constitution of the individual soul, the super soul and nature, both material and spiritual, is called a dhira, or sober man. Because if you know these three things, then you'll never be bewildered. Because again, as soon as we are bewildered in desire, in anxiety and stress, we have forgotten soul, super soul, and the material nature. That is the only cause of our lamentation. So to become sober, to become a dhiras, we just have to know these three things: soul, super soul, and the spiritual material nature. So just in the two purports in 12 and 13, Srila Prabhupada has presented 4 points to refute the Mayavad philosophy. So I just wanted to quickly summarize those. They're good for us in case we ever have to present this. But Prabhupada talks first that we are individuals eternally, now and forever, speaking on the comment to the 12th verse. Then he says the reference to the individual cannot be the body. Sometimes the Mayavadis say that Krishna is speaking of the body as individual, not the soul, because he has already condemned thinking about the body in verse 11, then how this reference to individuality in verse 12 can be of the body. It is clearly of the soul. That is the second point. The third point is that the soul never changes. So then how can it merge? It cannot have one constitution today and another constitution later. That would then lead to a changing of the soul. And we'll see that also in the coming verses. So that is the third reason that this philosophy does not hold any water. And the fourth, even if we don't accept that we are eternal, we have to accept that Krishna is distinct from us, different. And so the Mayavadis contend that the distinction between Arjuna and Krishna is just illusion or Maya. It exists only in the material world. Once free from Maya, we all become one. That is the Mayavad philosophy. But if that were true, then what is the point of Arjuna to hear from Krishna? If we're all in illusion, then Krishna would be an illusion too. But no, Arjuna is hearing from Krishna. Not only Arjuna, even the Mayavad philosophers will reference Bhagavad Gita, will speak from Bhagavad Gita. So there is a clear distinction, right? So how the Mayavadis can read the Bhagavad Gita, the same Bhagavad Gita, yet propound that this philosophy of oneness is there, when Krishna is speaking completely the opposite. Right? So this is some points that Krishna, that Prabhupada makes. If Krishna was an ordinary human being with the 4 defects like us, then there's no point to even hear. So these 4 points Prabhupada makes in the 2 purports to refute this philosophy. So I will just conclude with the final verses, and I'm sorry, this title is incorrect. I didn't change the title. But in the 14th verse, Krishna says, O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharata. One must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. And in the 15th verse, O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. So Arjuna is still saying, my happiness is with the bodies of my friends that I'll lose. And Krishna is saying, yes, distress will come if they lose this body. But distress and happiness come even now. Just as the seasons change, they come. So we cannot stop it. It is all based on one's past karma. So this material world, it is built this way. Happiness, distress. Happiness, distress. So one should learn to transcend, come to a higher spiritual platform, and tolerate these material happinesses and distress. Don't become a yo-yo going up and down. One must tolerate, and Prabhupada gives some examples of tolerating taking a cold bath in the winter. Like that, Krishna is saying that you should tolerate the happiness and distresses on the platform of the body. It is simply a disturbance. And, our consciousness, when we attach to the body, we then experience the happinesses and distresses of the body. And Borijan Prabhu gives a nice example of when we attach to the car. When I think I'm so attached to the car that when the car is hit by a stone, I feel pain. Because I'm so attached to it, I feel the pain that is experienced by something that is not me. I am the driver. I am not hit by the stone, yet I feel pain because I have so much attachment to the car. So similarly, when we are attached to the body, we then experience, we experience the pain and distresses of the body. But if one tolerates, knowing, I am not the body, I am spirit soul. I was not hit by the stone, the car was. When we lose our extreme attachment, then this consciousness can manifest. Right? And so liberation that Krishna speaks about here, liberation is not a geographic destination. It is simply to become free from the binds of the material world, to become free from this material consciousness. That is liberation. Then one becomes free. So now Krishna will continue discussing why lament for the body. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no disturbance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. So why is the body non-existent? Prabhupada is speaking that because it is always changing. As soon as we try to define the body, that moment it is changed to something else. So it is considered non-existent. It is not illusion, but it is temporary. So we say it doesn't exist because it is always in a state of flux. It is always changing, every millisecond. So you cannot define it. But the soul, what is the nature of the soul? It is eternal. It never changes. Right? He says the soul, there is no change. It is constant. And thus that's why this whole merging philosophy doesn't work. Because it would mean then the soul would change. Today is separated, tomorrow it would merge. That means there's a change to the soul. But here again, Krishna is speaking, there is no change. The body is always changing, but the soul is always existent. And the seers of truth, they know these two facts. So now, just conclude the last paragraph of the purport, Prabhupada is guiding us that we're entering this jnana section of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is going to prove, based on a platform of jnana, the difference between spirit and matter. All the way up until verse 30, Krishna is going to speak about this topic of the distinction between spirit and matter. And we'll see as we get into the yoga ladder This is the platform of Jnana Yoga. He'll not yet speak about Krishna until he gets later in this chapter, but just to distinguish between spirit and matter. And we have a great deal of gratitude to Srila Prabhupada in these purports, because the purports are bringing a very subtle topic of the soul and helping us understand this in very clear ways with his analogies and examples. And that is the great sign of someone with brilliance. They can bring a very subtle or difficult to understand topic and make it very tangible. And Srila Prabhupada has done this. This soul is so widely misunderstood by so many, but by his very vibrant analogies has made it accessible to all of us. So we're very, very grateful. So we'll continue studying the topics of the soul next week. So this is the first 16 verses of chapter 2, very important. Setting the stage of Arjuna's surrender in that right mood with very strong conviction, asking Krishna to instruct him, and Krishna now has begun to instruct him very strongly and very firmly out of his love to bring Arjuna out of this bodily consciousness, and we can pray that we'll soon also come out of this bodily consciousness. So with that, I'll end here. So any comments or questions, corrections or discussion for today's verses?
Krishna Prabhuji?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, when I was doing my homework, there was a question on the 6 opulences of Bhagwan.
Yes.
I didn't understand the last one, Prabhuji. Renunciation. How do we?
Yeah. So renunciation, Krishna is full of, in this Bhagavad Gita we see that opulence in full display. That Krishna, the supreme personality of Godhead, is willing to renounce his position and take up the position of taxi driver.
Oh.
Right? So he has so much love for his devotees that he renounces even his position for his devotees. So that is a great opulence. And he does so even in a very public way, right? In a very public scene. So that is renunciation. Yeah, the other 5 are very obvious to us.
Yeah.
We don't consider that renunciation as an opulence, but it is a great strength and opulence. Nice question.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Anything else?
Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
So I have some multiple questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is you showed the picture of the boat, as a man overboard.
Yeah.
So can you please describe that with respect to the body and cloth?
Yeah. So it's a very wonderful point Prabhupada makes. This is in the first verse of purport. That when someone is drowning in the ocean, we don't try to save the clothes of a drowning person. We save the person. We want to pull the person out of the water. So similarly, when we show our compassion, like the person on the boat is compassionate to the person in the water, they want to pull them out, save them. When we show our compassion, we should show our compassion to the soul. We want to pull the soul out from its conditioned state, and not the body, right? So saving the body is like saving the clothes. So we see different humanitarian efforts, feeding the poor, or giving health care. Those are good, but you're just addressing the body. Real compassion is to address the soul. And when you save the soul, the body will also be uplifted, just like if you pull the man out of the water, his clothes will come with him. Right? But if we just pull the clothes out, that is not real compassion. So Prabhupada is saying that our compassion should be rightly placed at the platform of the soul. Then we'll actually help that person. We're not going to help the person if we pull the clothes out and he's still in the water.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Prabhu. Thank you. Actually, with respect to this, there is one statement called Manava Seva is Madhava Seva. So I actually get this kind of conflict when we talk with the friends in my age. Basically, they are more with respect to the doing and serving people more than scriptures. So, can you please connect that Manava Seva, Madhava Seva line to this?
Yeah, because that seva is good. It's better than serving your own senses, right? It's better than living lavishly on your own and others are suffering from hunger. So that is a step in the right direction because you're trying to help. But if you really want to help that person, you want to feed the poor, feed them prasad. Because when you feed them prasad, you not only nourish the body, but more importantly, you nourish the soul. You're giving that person relief from some of their sinful activities by the rendering of devotional service. Honoring prasad is a form of devotional service. So,
Yes.
so the intelligent philanthropist knows how to save the soul and body together,
That is the point.
right? So you do both in one. You can't save the soul and leave the body hungry. Yeah, then that's also not going to result. And that's why Srila Prabhupada put forth so many efforts like Food for Life. He wanted to distribute prasad far and wide. But distributing just material foodstuffs will give them temporary relief, but again, suffering is coming the next day or the next day after. But by giving prasad, I can actually change the course of their suffering. And that is real compassion.
Okay, so the initial stage should be like uplift the body and soul together. Then you come to the point of soul.
No, soul first, then body.
Okay, yeah, I got your point, Prabhu.
Soul
Thank you.
first. If you have a choice between the two, if someone comes to you, Prabhu, and says, Prabhu, I can either save your body or soul, which one will you choose? You know.
Yeah.
Which one you would choose?
Soul.
Soul. Okay, now we ask somebody on the street which one they would choose. They would choose body. So our job is to help them understand, no, you should try to save your soul first.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you.
I
And
think
there is one more thing because in our relatives and the group there is a very big spiritual committee, one more committee. So they have this saying that the point 4, we say that why Gita. With respect to that point, they say that Krishna, Rama, all are in the Maya. Basically, they are not entangled, but they are in the Maya. They are showing that even in the material world, they can be attacked by this Maya. So this actually, there is a big source. I mean, there is an institution which teaches this basically.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to get in this awareness that how can we tackle these kind of institutions, because they're openly, they have the books, they have the purport written for the Bhagavad Gita, and they're saying that Krishna and Rama also in Maya.
Well, our instruction by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and by Srila Prabhupada is we should just run away. We should not engage for even a millisecond in such dialogues or such discussions, because it is extremely dangerous for our own bhakti. Entire life of bhakti can be spoiled in an instant, in a moment of association with Mayavad philosophy. So our best course of action is to run as quickly as it can. Actually, it says, the injunction says one should quit their body. That's how extreme and significant it is. So better we don't engage in dialogue with with folks who have this, but with folks who have ignorance, who don't know. Yes, we can try to instruct. But if someone says this is what it is, then okay, just move away. Don't engage. Just run away.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you for that answer. The other thing is liberation is not a geographical determination. That's what you mentioned.
Yes.
Can you explain? Because what we think is like, okay, we are here and the Golok Vrindavan is somewhere, so our liberation is to go to the Vaikuntha. That's what we think.
Yeah.
So the statement here is liberation is not a geographical determination. That I didn't get it clear.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So Krishna says that at once you can transcend the modes of material nature, right? He says at once you can overcome his material energy. Right? How so this becoming free from the modes of material nature is what liberation is. Now one can be in a liberated state within the material world. Certainly one is in the liberated state in the spiritual world. But the point is, liberation means to become free from the modes of material nature. So it can happen instantly, even within this material world. So one does not need to wait to go to the spiritual world to be liberated. So yes, you're right. Conventionally or colloquially, we understand liberation to be going to the spiritual world. And certainly everybody in the spiritual world is liberated from the material modes. But we should understand what it means. It means to become free from the influences of the modes of nature. And that's why, Krishna says, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma. That as soon as one becomes self-realized, they become fully joyful. Well, how that is possible if this world is full of material miseries? Because one has become free from those conditioning. So that is the meaning of liberation. So that's why I said it's not a geographic destination. It is a position of becoming free from the modes.
Okay, Prabhu, thank you. It's very nice lecture, Prabhu. As usual, it is very wonderful. Thank you very much for this lecture.
Hare Krishna. Dhanyavad Pranam. Thank you for your blessings. Any other discussion today?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dhanyavad Pranam. All good. Sri Prabhupada. Yeah, very wonderful lecture, Prabhuji. I have, I think, probably 2 questions. One part I wanted to understand clearly about the refuting of the Mayavadi philosophy. You talked about 4 points. Out of that, I think I understood only 2. One was, just correct me if I'm wrong in my understanding of it. One, you said that we know from the scriptures that soul never changes. And basically the Mayavadi philosophy is talking about soul merging into the Supreme. So that would mean it involves some change, which is a major contradiction. Second thing you said is Krishna is distinct from us, whereas the Mayavadis think that we are one, right? So Krishna is definitely the Supreme Personality. That's why that's the second reason. But I don't know if I'm very clear in making the point. And third and fourth, I didn't understand at all.
Okay.
Third, I think you said we are individuals, eternal now and always. So I'm kind of elaborate on all the points. I'm not really clear on.
Yes, and these are some important points that, again, Prabhupada makes in the purport of the 12th and 13th verses. So if you put them all together, you'll see he makes these 4 points. I'll address them in the order you mentioned them. So the soul not changing, I think you characterized that nicely, that again, if it merges, it means its constitution has changed. So that first and therefore throws that whole idea out. The second point you raised is the fourth one I put, which is that if Krishna's form is Maya or illusion, it's temporary, and that right now we see a distinction between Krishna and Arjuna, but then in the liberated state we're all one. If that in fact is the case, it means then that Krishna is also fallible, because we know Arjuna and all of us are fallible. So then if that is the case, what is the point of Arjuna to go to Krishna to try to get out of his illusion? He's already, if Krishna is an illusion, if your hands are tied and my hands are tied, then I cannot ask you to untie me. Right? So how you can refer to the Bhagavad Gita and quote from the Bhagavad Gita and then suggest, though, that everybody's on the same platform. Right? So that is a very faulty logic that exists. You cannot take the words of Krishna and obviously the Mayavadis distort the words of Krishna quite severely, because very early in the very beginning of the 2nd chapter he has said, never was there a time that I did not exist, nor you. So he is saying explicitly that we are eternally individuals, not just temporarily. Oh, we are in the battlefield, you are one form, I am another. No, he's saying never, and then he says, nor shall we ever cease to exist. So not only today, not only in the past, but also in the future. So we are eternally individuals. That is the third point. And the fourth refutation is that, that's not a word, the fourth refuting point is that the reference to individuality cannot mean the body. So sometimes the Mayavadis will take that 12th verse and say, oh, Krishna is speaking about the body. But that's that passes no logic, because Krishna in the 11th verse has already spoken that the wise don't lament about the body. He has already disregarded the importance of the body and established the importance of the soul. So then in the very next verse, he's not going to go back to speak about the body, he's going to speak about the soul. So that is the fourth reason that this philosophy, doesn't hold any water. And those are the 4 points that Prabhupada makes.
Okay, Prabhuji, thank you so much.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much, and again, appreciate everyone's flexibility for today's early morning start. Next week we'll resume again at our normal scheduled time. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.